Welcome back to another episode of Stand on Guard. We're going to be going to question period in about 10 minutes. But before then, it's here. I've been talking about this bill for the last year, and it's here today. It was called the Online Safety Act. It's being introduced today in the House of Commons as the Online Harms Act. You say, what the hell is that? Well, we're going to talk about it in just a minute. So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need the resolve to resist. Please like the station now if you can, before we get into the broadcast too much. And subscribe if you already haven't. I know some people have subscribed and they get unsubscribed. Yes, YouTube is up to a lot of tricks lately. It gave me partial monetization yesterday on a broadcast because I talked about Ukraine. Oh, and I said, maybe we shouldn't be giving billions to Ukraine. That was apparently a no-no. So YouTube came down hard on me. So not happy about that. But as I said at the intro here, the Online Harms Act is being introduced in the House of Commons today. We got very little notification of this. This is what I've been talking about for the last year, at least. It was originally called the Online Safety Act or Online Safety Bill. It's going to be introduced today as the Online Harms Act. Yeah. And of course, does that sound nebulous? Yes, of course it is. What's going to happen here is it's going to be geared and it's going to be targeted towards, believe it or not, the safety of children and child pornography. I thought we already had the laws against child pornography. Yes, we do. But that's really not the point of this act and this law that will amend the criminal code. That's the veneer. That's what they are after here in terms of distraction. They want you to think it's all about child pornography, even though we have lots of laws right now banning, prohibiting, punishing the possession, the distribution, the production of child pornography. This law will not really be about child pornography. It will not be about protecting children. It will be about banning misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. That's been the purpose of this bill all along. It's about Trudeau censoring new media and independent media. It's about Trudeau putting his opponents in jail. That's what the Online Harms Act is going to be about. And that's why we're warning you about it right now. Let's listen to what Trudeau said recently when he was interviewed in Edmonton at a radio station. Because this guy can't stop talking about misinformation and disinformation.
We're part of it. We're having conversations about it. We're trying to fix it. We're putting money towards local independent media. We're going to continue to try and make sure that Canadians understand the importance of not being fooled by misinformation, by disinformation, develop their own critical skills to resist that sort of stuff, and highlight and come on shows like yours where people are asking tough questions and challenging people to actually reveal their own core thoughts.
All right, you really think Justin Trudeau wants tough questions? No. Do you really think he wants controversy? Do you think he wants you to be critically thinking about the media? No. He wants to ban the media he doesn't agree with. He wants you to watch CBC and CTV. He has said that time and time again. He wants you to watch the media that he agrees with, the media that all has the same narrative. That's what Justin Trudeau is up to here. And then listen to this jackass in Ukraine over the weekend. I played this clip already, but you really need to hear this. This is how nonsensical this is.
Back at home who might have those concerns.
We have seen the impact of Russian misinformation and disinformation in countries all around the world, with the rise of a far right that is turning its back on Ukraine, turning its back on the international rules-based order, turning its back on democracies. Canadians still remain overwhelmingly in favor, not just of Ukraine, but of the rules-based order. It was unfortunate over the past number of weeks that we saw the Conservative Party vote against the economic measures for Ukraine that would come with the modernized free trade deal.
Okay, nonsense. What did Justin Trudeau say the day after, or actually, it was probably the Monday after, the discovery that he had invited a former Waffen-SS soldier, a former Nazi, to the House of Commons, and he led a standing ovation twice for this guy, Yaroslav Hunka. Trudeau had the gall to suggest this was all a result of Russian disinformation, that he had nothing to do with this. And that, of course, yes, he may have been a Nazi, but it was all Russian disinformation anyway. And that's how he always gets out of it. He is obsessed with misinformation and disinformation and trying to suggest all of the ills of the world are a direct result of you listening to the wrong media. You not listening to his state-sanctioned media. And he has said time and time again, he wishes he lived in a world where everybody watched the media he watches. And the joke, of course, is he's got a YouTube station of his own, but nobody watches it. He puts his commercials on there for heat pumps, and he gets about 300 viewers. So that's where Justin Trudeau is. So I'm warning you today, we are going to be looking at this bill exhaustively, comprehensively, and we're going to illuminate what the Online Harms Act is really about. Because it's not about protecting children. It's not about making the internet safe for children or for you. It's about making it more difficult to speak the truth or to disagree with Justin Trudeau. That's what this bill is all about. I've been talking about this bill for a long time. It's finally here, and we are going to fight it. We need to fight it. It's the third layer of Justin Trudeau's internet censorship bills. Started with the innocuous bill C-18 or C-11, which was all about supposedly Canadian content. Then there was C-18, which was supposedly all about making those rotten social media companies pay Canadian media to have them on their platforms. That was another disaster. And that's all about censorship as well. So we're going to go to question period shortly. There's a few more members' statements to hear. I want to introduce that subject because it's going to be brought up after question period today. The bill will be tabled as far as the planning is indicating. And I've been waiting for this bill for quite some time. I've been talking about it, and it's finally here. And it's time to fight back as vigorously and as much as we can. So thanks for watching today. Let's enjoy question period together. And no matter what happens, remember what Humphrey Bogart said.
That's the press, baby. The press. And there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing.
Yeah. We are going to stay independent and free.
Mr. Speaker, we continue to see unbelievable hypocrisy from the leader of the NDP. Yet again, he is pretending to be outraged by the actions of his Liberal coalition partner while expecting Canadians to ignore the fact that he is the Prime Minister's chief enabler. The NDP say they are angered by the waste and corruption behind the ArriveCan app, yet it never would have happened without their support. The Prime Minister needed his coalition cohort to have enough votes to get the money through Parliament. And the leader of the NDP was more than happy to vote yes at least 8 times to give tens of millions for cost overruns and money for nothing contracts to shell companies. Clearly, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost, crime, or corruption. Their disregard for taxpayer money is appallingly consistent, and the leader of the NDP should be ashamed for not admitting his role in the spoondoggle, and apologize to Canadians for grandstanding on social media.
The Honourable Member for Orleans. Mr. Speaker, on February 12th, I had the privilege of visiting a class of grade 5 and 6 students at Maple Ridge French Immersion Elementary School in Orleans with the Minister of Veterans Affairs as part of the Valentine's program. It was really touching to meet and talk with the students who participated in the Valentine's for Vets program. They did so by making Valentine's Day cards for veterans. It was an opportunity for them to send a special message to our veterans, thanking them for their service and thanking them for what they've done and sacrificed for our freedom. I'd like to thank their teacher, Sophie Labrosse, and the school principal, Mireille Filion, for their welcome and for their interest in participating in this program, which has been running since 1996. It's a program that helps ensure that our young people never forget. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member from Timmins, James Bay.
We are on the 12th anniversary of Parliament passing Shannon's Dream Motion, the motion that
There's
was
the
named
idiot
in honor of the
who
young
wants
Cree
to
leader
ban
Shannon Coustache,
any
who
promotion
stood
of
up to
fossil
challenge the
fuels.
systemic
Look at
denial
the
of rights
look
of
at this
Indigenous
damn
children. Shannon
authoritarian.
had never seen a real school.
Oh,
Children in
disgusting
Attawapiskat were
member
being
of Parliament
educated in squalid
who
and
actually
dangerous
applauded
conditions. The government knew
when
this, they just didn't give a damn.
a
And then
woman who
13-year-old
was not
Shannon
given an
launched the
organ
largest
transplant
youth-driven
because she
civil
refused to
rights
get the
movement in
vaccine.
Canadian
He was
history.
almost
Shannon
excited
never
about
lived
that.
long enough to see the beautiful school that was built because of
Activity
her
on
work. She died in a
X
horrific
over
car
that,
accident at 15.
and he was
But
condemned
following her
for it,
death, youth,
and he
activists, and
too
educators from
said
across
that
Canada
was
launched
just
Shannon's dream
misinformation,
to end the
disinformation.
systemic
Because he
underfunding of First
deleted his
Nation
tweet, he
schools.
was so
We have
embarrassed about it.
so
Charlie
much
Angus
farther to
is an
go.
authority.
Children at Ibamatung have no school
I'm
right
sure you
now.
all
Children
remember
in
that
Saskatchewan have no
that
proper gym.
incident. But
Shannon reminded us the greatest resource in this country isn't
he should have
oil
a
or
bag
diamonds.
over
It
his
is in the
head when
potential
every
of this
time
young
he asks a
generation.
question or
Thank you,
makes a
Shannon.
statement
The
in the
fight
House
for
of
justice
Commons.
continues.
Disgrace.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. It's with great pride that I share with you today the renewal by UNESCO of the prestigious World Biosphere Reserve status for the Lac Saint-Pierre region. It's a great honor for Berthier-Masquinongé and for all of Quebec. It's great to see the exceptional nature of our territories.
I can't believe these guys were waived last week
in this
because
way.
they've got another break coming
And
up.
as it has
Like
been
they needed
for
another
24
break
years.
after 6 weeks off for Christmas. It's just incredible.
Thanks to the great work of locals, the Lac Saint-Pierre Biosphere Reserve works to reconcile human activity with the protection of our natural and cultural heritage. Faced with today's environmental challenges, we have a responsibility to adjust our policies, regulations, and practices to ensure the ongoing vitality of the ecosystems that ensure our prosperity and our quality of life. I'd like to congratulate Henri-Paul Normandin and his team on the committee of the Lac Saint-Pierre ZIP. You can count on my support for your important mission.
The Honourable Member from Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry.
This NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost, the crime, or corruption after 8 years. And the details and cost around the $60 million and counting ArriveCan app gets worse.
I'm just trying to show some of your comments.
Now the NDP are pretending to be outraged by the facts being uncovered. But the truth is, when the Prime Minister needed the votes to approve the millions of dollars, he funneled to companies like GC Strategies, who did no actual work and got $20 million of taxpayers' money.
Hello, everybody, by the way. Welcome back
the
to
NDP and the Bloc
our daily
to prop up and
probe
allow
in the
this spending
question
to take
period.
place, further enabling all this
It's
corruption
fun.
and incompetence. The
Either
records
you
show
go
the
crazy
NDP
or you
voted
have
at
fun
least
with it.
8 times with the
Because
Liberals
these people
to
are
allow
mad.
the ArriveCan spending to continue. All these money
just
for nothing contracts.
want
It gets
some of your
worse the
comments
more
up
we
here.
know.
Thank you for
The truth
all
is
your
the
comments.
NDP refused to block this spending,
Try to
and
show
they're
them all.
complicit in it. After 8 years as Prime Minister, and his NDP buddies aren't worth the cost or the corruption.
The Honourable Member for Vimy. Mr. Speaker,
Yeah, they're still
2
droning
years
on
ago,
with their.
Russia massively expanded its illegal and unprovoked attack against Ukraine.
Yeah, what
2
about
years later,
What
We are
about the
commemorating
invasion of
those
the
who have died
Donbass region
defending their
by
homeland.
Ukrainian forces in
Courageous
2014?
and
You never hear
audacious
about that,
Ukrainians who are fighting for their
but
identity, their democracy, their history,
they don't
their
have a
language.
democracy.
Will always stand with Ukraine.
It's crap.
Besides taking in 200,000
Well, you keep standing with
refugees,
Ukraine
we
for
have
as long as you want.
$13 billion of
Just stop
military
spending my
and
money on them.
humanitarian aid. Let's not repeat the mistakes we made before World War II. Ukrainians are fighting and dying against tyranny for all of us. To quote Churchill,
Yeah,
about
Ukrainians
the
were
goal,
fighting with
it is
Germany in World
victory.
War II.
Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory, however long and hard the road may be, for without victory, there is no survival. We and our allies will continue to provide aid until that victory is achieved. Slava Ukraini.
Yeah.
Questions.
Here we go.
The honourable member from Regina Capel.
Oh, we got Andy Shear up there.
While the common sense conservatives will abolish tax, build homes, fix the budget, and stop crime, this Liberal Prime Minister, with the support of the Bloc, is not worth the cost or the crime or the corruption after 8 years. The Bloc voted 8 times to give millions to the Liberals for its ArriveCan overruns. The Bloc leader knew that Arrive scam would cost $80,000, but it still voted at least millions more for Arrive scam. What is the Bloc for? The Honourable Minister of Public Services. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Like we have done several times, this question has already received several answers, but we would like to thank the Auditor General once again for important support and her recommendations with respect to the ArriveCan app. The good news is most of these recommendations have already been implemented. We're going to continue to do this as long as possible. The Honourable Member for Regina Capel. The cost of ArriveCan did not skyrocket all at once. The government needed votes to finance this corrupted app. And the Bloc leader came to his rescue to give him his vote, not just twice, 8 times. The Bloc continued to vote millions extra for ArriveCan, and it cost a lot to vote Bloc. Like the Bloc leader said, we're not going to look at everything the government has spent
them
in
on
detail.
This ad. I keep saying ad scam.
Keep
hitting them on Arrive scam because it is monstrous.
I see that the Minister of Public Services and Procurement has risen to answer the question, but I'd like to remind all members that questions must be relevant to the government or to the chair of a committee, the Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I do feel rather unable to answer the question appropriately because they are for the Bloc. And I hope the colleague and the leader of the Conservative Party know
Dave,
who they
I've
can
been saying that for years, and I worked at the House of Commons.
Nevertheless,
I used to say, what in the hell do we have a bunch of separatists sitting in the House of Commons for? They should not be sitting in a federal legislature if they want to break up the country.
Extreme situation.
It is absurd.
Something we haven't seen in ages, and even in the
but
event of a crisis,
elect them to
all
federal
the rules
seats.
do have
That's
to be respected.
That's why they're
the Honourable
sitting
Member
there.
for Regina Capel.
Common sense conservatives will axe the tax, fix the budget, build the homes, and stop the crime. This NDP Liberal Prime Minister is proving that he's not worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption. Now, the NDP are pretending to be outraged by the Arrive scandal, but the Liberals didn't have enough votes to get the funding through Parliament, so the NDP came to the rescue and 8 times voted to keep funding no-show jobs and IT work that was never done. Common sense conservatives voted no. Had the NDP and Bloc done the same, Arrive scam would never have happened. So does the NDP Liberal coalition deal require the NDP to fund Liberal corruption?
The Honourable Member for Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This question has already received multiple answers.
Oh, multiple answers, yes.
Speaker of the House, Mr. Speaker, is obviously a bit strange. He would know that if he needs to ask questions to the NDP, I am not, and we are not on this side of the good people, the right people to answer those questions. I would invite our colleague to ask the questions to the right people.
The honourable member from Regina Capel.
It's his government's deal with the NDP, Mr. Speaker. And while common sense Conservatives will axe the tax, fix the budget, build the homes, and stop the crime, the NDP Liberal Prime Minister is proving that he's not worth the cost or the corruption. The Prime Minister managed to find $60 million for his Arrive scam app, but now he's going to reach into the pockets of Canadians yet again and hike the carbon tax on April 1st. Canadians are struggling with out-of-control costs, and millions of Canadians are visiting the food bank for the first time. So will the Prime Minister just show some compassion and cancel his plan to hike the carbon tax?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, unlike the Conservatives who deny that climate change exists and want to take money away from the Conservatives, we have a question for you, for the Conservatives.
Take money away from the Conservatives.
What are they going to
Can't
do?
even read her
Are
own
they
script.
going to cut $1,100 from Ontario families, $1,800 from Alberta families, $1,200 from Manitoba families?
It's going up. It's quadrupling on April 1st, you moron. You know that. Are you even aware of your own goddamn carbon tax? These people are so stupid.
The honourable member from Regina Capel.
Conservatives are going to axe the tax and not take the money out of Canadians' pockets in the first place, Mr. Speaker.
How stupid do you have to be? You don't take your money away in the first place.
Parliamentary budget
You're just
officer
giving back
concluded
money you've
that
stolen.
Canadians pay far more in the carbon tax than anything they hope to get back in the rebate. And on April 1st, they're going to hike it again. And something devastating is happening in Canada, Mr. Speaker. People are starting networks on social media to coordinate efforts to go dumpster diving. There's actually one in Toronto, Mr. Speaker, and the founder said the most common answer we get to the question of why do you want to join this network is too broke to afford food. Why are they hiking the carbon tax, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, note that the opposition does not rebut the claim that they deny that climate change exists. Note that
What an idiot.
not standing
Of course
up
there's
for future
climate change.
generations of Canadians by protecting
But it's not
sustainability
everything in this life to
acting on
worry
climate
about.
change. But I want to say, Mr. Speaker, the inflation numbers have come down below 3%.
Yes.
Our government is continuing to put money back in the pockets of Canadians.
In the pockets.
And we will
Listen,
be there for Canadians.
you're not
offering
putting anything in
supports
my
to the
pocket.
most vulnerable Canadians while the Conservatives vote against every single time.
The honourable member for La Prairie.
What an absolute waste of space.
Those who were worried about the love affair between the Liberals and the NDP can rest assured it will continue until 2025.
What a hypocrite.
Weddings are expensive.
He's got you
no
in his
question about
pocket
it. But
too,
above
you
all,
blockhead.
It's all about pleasing Quebecers, not Quebecers' priorities. Quebecers
What?
didn't ask for daycare.
There are
We
so
already have
many
them. Quebecers didn't ask for federal
calling
dental coverage. We
hypocrites
already
sitting
have
in that House of Commons.
Quebecers didn't ask
Look
for
at the-
drug
look
coverage. We already
at
have
us.
that too.
He's got
How
the
much
nerve
more
to
is it going to
stand up
cost us to
and say,
ensure our two
we're not in
lovebirds
league
for
with the
programs
Liberals,
that aren't even
just the
Quebec's
NDP.
priorities?
What?
The Honourable Minister of Innovation, Mr. Speaker, better off if Quebec has been a leader in social coverage. Yes, we've taken inspiration for healthcare from Quebec, and in terms of dental care, yes, we've taken inspiration from Quebec every time we take initiatives that will bring Canada to have more services for Canadians. And Mr. Speaker, what surprises me when I hear the Bloc this morning is not to talk about investment or like the one in Laval this week. Canada will have the most modern factory here in Quebec, and we're concerned about the safety and security of Canadians. The honourable member for La Prairie. If only Liberal NDP health insurance improved health care. But a year since the forced agreement on health transfers, not a penny has been paid to Quebec because Ottawa is imposing its conditions. 11 months since Quebec demanded the right to opt out of federal dental coverage, and still nothing. Today, our lovebirds are adding a third long-term squabble over drug coverage. And meanwhile, not a single Quebecer is getting better care. Instead of scheming to stay in power, why not
All they ever
put
care
money
about is Quebecers.
back in the pockets of Quebecers so we can treat our people?
Oh,
The Honourable Minister of Health.
waste
Mr.
of space
Speaker,
these people are.
clearly the Bloc is trying to create squabbles, but we are looking for solutions. And that is the reason why we're having good conversations with Minister Dubé and the Quebec government. It's a question of enhancing healthcare transfers, and it's clear. It is essential for all Quebecers to have access to dental care, for a solid healthcare system. And this is possible with a spirit of cooperation and not with squabbles like this or debates like this.
The honourable member from Burnaby South.
People are getting ripped off by corporate grocery stores in this country.
That's a good one, Rose. Thank you for that.
It's
tip.
on another level.
That's good. I'm going to look into that today.
1 liter of olive oil costs $36. Now, the federal government subsidizes corporations working in the north with a program called Nutrition North.
Oh, this
Nutrition
guy.
North gives millions of
Mr.
dollars
I'm
of
in the
subsidies
pocket
to
of
these
Justin
companies.
Trudeau.
These companies take a third of it and don't pass it on to consumers. So will the Liberal government reform Nutrition North so the benefit goes to the people, not to the CEOs of corporations working in the north?
Here, here. The Honourable Minister for Northern Affairs.
Why another suit? You've got lots of money, Jugmate.
Very important question. Our government is absolutely committed
It's a
to
very
ensuring
important question.
that 100% of the subsidy, of the retail subsidy, is passed directly to Northerners. We know that prices are too high in the north, and we have worked, we'll continue to work with territorial governments, with Indigenous partners, and more importantly, people who live in the north and the Arctic to make progress. Progress has been made, but there's a lot of work to do.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
Program is an abject failure. C'est clair que les entreprises.
Clearly, big grocery in the north are ripping people off, and the government, through its subsidies, is giving money to these companies. And these companies, instead of helping people, are giving big gifts to CEOs and big grocery chains. So my question is simple. When will the Liberal government solve this program, fix it, so it's helpful for people and not CEOs? The Honourable Minister. Thank you. I'd like to thank the member for his question. Our government is committed to make sure that 100% of subsidies will go directly to citizens of the north. We know that prices are too high in the north, and we're working with the territorial government and with our Indigenous partners and people who live in the north and the Arctic to make progress on this file. And it's such an important subject, and there's so much work to be done, and we're going to do it. Thank you.
The honourable member from Foothills.
After 8 years, this Liberal NDP Prime Minister is not worth the crime, the corruption, or the cost. Common sense Conservatives will axe the tax because the NDP Liberal Carbon Tax Coalition has failed. They have not hit a single emissions target. But do you know who has succeeded? Farmers. According to the Global Institute for Food Security, the carbon footprint for wheat grown in Saskatchewan is 67% lower than the rest of the world. So why is the Prime Minister punishing Canadian farmers for this incredible accomplishment? Instead of blaming farmers for his carbon tax failures, will he not axe his plan to increase the tax on April 1st?
The Honourable Minister for Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And being a farmer, I fully understand the importance and the effect of climate change, Mr. Speaker. And we understand how important it is to take care of the land. That is why we as a government have invested $1.5 million to help farmers and processors reduce their environmental footprint and stay on the cutting edge. We will continue to fight climate change and work with farmers and ranchers right across this country, Mr. Speaker.
This guy should get together with Joe Biden and have a comedy. Yeah.
The fact is, farmers are succeeding where the Liberal
Macaulay's
NDP
out of
Carbon
there.
Tax Coalition is failing. And what is farmers' reward for this? A 23% increase in the carbon tax on April 1st. Common sense Conservatives will axe the tax and reward farmers for those accomplishments. Did you know that wheat grown in Canada can travel around the world 3.5 times before it has the same carbon footprint as wheat grown in Europe? Canadian farmers have accomplished this through innovation, not carbon taxes. Will the Liberals finally admit they were wrong, pass 234 unamended, and axe their plan to increase the carbon tax on April 1st?
One road, that's exactly what Trudeau is doing. Yes, meeting with his boyfriend and offering him loads of money.
Last week, in fact, I was visiting a farmer in Peterborough who is working on regenerative agriculture, but I find it...
Who the hell can take
Colleagues,
Gilbo seriously?
order.
You build any roads lately,
The
Stephen?
chair is having great difficulty hearing the response from the minister due to other folks taking the floor. I'm also hearing the member who had asked a question having difficulty even hearing in his earpiece. So I'm going to ask all members, please, to keep it down. The honourable minister from the top.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do find it quite ironic to be lectured by the Conservative Party on support to farmers when at the end of last year, they voted against On-Farm Climate Action Fund to support sustainable agriculture. They voted against Dairy Innovation and Investment Fund for farmers, Mr. Speaker. They voted against funding in support of dairy, poultry, and egg supply management producers. On this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we believe in our farmers, we support our farmers, and we help them to fight climate change.
Doesn't make sense.
The honourable
Gilbo is the guy
the honourable member
making
from
policy
Lethbridge.
for this government. Like we don't build roads anymore.
The tax, build the homes, stop the crime, and fix the budget. That's what our commitment to Canadians is. Meanwhile, the NDP Liberal Prime Minister can't help himself but skyrocket the crime, increase the corruption, and of course, he's just not worth the cost because he's causing it to go through the roof. But he's incredibly hypocritical because for him, pollution is free. He can just jet set around the world while Canadians continue to pay. On April 1st, they'll see an increase of 23% on the carbon tax. My question is simple. Will the Liberals finally side with Conservatives and scrap the tax?
The honourable minister for natural resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the most appropriate question is, will the Conservatives actually look at the data? The data will tell you that 8 out of 10 Canadian families get more money back and that it is actually an affordability measure. If the honourable member would actually look at the research done by the University of Calgary, she would know that. But, Mr. Speaker, I think Canadians really need to understand that the Conservative approach to climate change is to let the planet burn. It is to leave an impoverished environment and an impoverished economy for the future of our children. Shame, shame, shame.
The honourable member from Lethbridge.
The contrast could not be more stark when it comes to the Liberals versus the Conservatives and their opposition to the Canadian people.
Once again, colleagues, the chair could not hear the question being asked by the honourable member, and that honourable member is actually close to the chair. The honourable member from Lethbridge, from the top.
It's shameful that my colleagues across the way would clap for a 23% increase in the carbon tax when Canadians are lining up at the open insurmountable numbers. Millions of Canadians cannot afford to put food on their tables, and these folks over here stand and clap. That is shameful. When will they grow?
When do they grow up? They're just so juvenile, these liberals.
Mr. Speaker, you can call them to account. You can call them to account.
I don't know what you're talking about, the sound. If you want to go off to CPAC, go off to CPAC. We're not here.
So time has come awfully close to the end of the honourable member's question. I'd like to reassure the honourable member the chair nor the table had heard a comment that was unparliamentary. So this is why it is very important to all members.
Oh, this jackass. Why didn't they vote him out of there?
Colleagues, it is very important for members to not comment while a member has the floor. The recognized member has the floor. I'm going to ask the honourable member, please, to restrain himself while I try to give an explanation to all members. As I was saying to colleagues,
Exactly. It's the goddamn speaker shutting off the sound. You go ahead, you'll see the same thing on CPAC. Where do you think I'm getting it from?
I'm going to ask the honourable member once again, please, and ask him, please follow the good example of his whip and restrain himself while this chair is talking.
I can't stand the speaker either.
It's so important
He's just,
for colleagues to
he is so annoying.
Be quiet so that the chair can hear the question, and if on occasion that members say
I
something
hear
that
he's
is
Christopher
untoward
Freeland's
or
cousin.
unparliamentary, that the chair or the table can hear that comment to making sure
Could be.
that things happen within
Acts like
an appropriate parliamentary tone. The honourable member from New Brunswick Southwest.
You didn't get an answer.
I'm terribly sorry. The honourable member, the honourable minister, to resign.
He's so he has lost his grip entirely. He just is way over his head with his job. It's so obvious. And yes, whoever is complaining about the sound, it's been like this since the speaker got in here. He shuts the sound off so you can't hear the heckling, so you can't hear anything else except the question and his own damn voice. He's been doing this for months, so this is new to you. I'm sorry about that. But as I can see, most of you who are watching are aware. I'm not shutting the sound off. CPAC's not shutting the sound off. Speaker Fergus is
Again, I'm going to
off.
ask all members, please restrain. So I'm going to give the honourable member from Lethbridge 10 seconds to put her question left, if she chooses to exercise that, to allow 10
he asked him to resign.
ask her
What
question.
a fool.
Would the honourable member from Lethbridge like to have those 10 seconds?
Mr. Speaker, the minister across the way had something to say to me before. Perhaps they'd say it on the record.
Is that speaker related to Biden? No. Lawrence Macaulay appears to be related to Biden.
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we agree that the contrast could not be more stark.
Yes.
Could not be more stark, Mr. Speaker, because of the Canada carbon rebate.
True.
We are putting money back in the pockets of Canadian, in the honourable member's own province, Mr. Speaker. $1,800 will go back to Canadian and Albertan families because of the Canada carbon rebate, Mr. Speaker. $1,200.
The Canada carbon rebate. Your rebranding of your damn tax.
Members to be very judicious if they're going to quote from something, but otherwise it could be perceived as a
Fergus,
prop.
just
So
shut up, sit down,
and
please get out of the way.
6 seconds left on the clock.
Mr. Speaker, I'll close by saying that the leader of the opposition's climate denial would axe all of the rebates that we are giving.
The honourable member from New Brunswick Southwest.
Who the hell knows what
Mr.
you're talking
Speaker,
about?
while common sense conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crimes, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption after 8 years. Canadians are paying higher prices because of sky-high taxes. Today in New Brunswick, we pay over almost 60 cents more for gasoline per litre than they do in neighboring Maine. On April the 1st, the carbon tax is going to go up again, 23%. Will the Liberals axe the carbon tax and give Canadians a break?
Great job. The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, what do you call someone who says one thing and does the other?
A hypocrite, and that's what you people are. My God, they're dense. These people are so damn dense. What do you call a person who says one thing and does another? A liberal.
Order.
Exactly.
The Honourable Minister.
Hypocritically. The Conservative Party says they have principles. If you don't like, they have other principles. In their 2021 platform, on which every one of those members of Parliament was elected, the platform said, quote, "We recognize that the most efficient way to reduce our emissions is to use pricing mechanisms." The Conservative position is not only devoid of facts, Mr. Speaker, but their position is the height of hypocrisy. How can Canadians believe anything these folks say? Hey!
The honourable member from New Brunswick Southwest.
Mr. Speaker, let's remember, these Liberals promised they would never increase the carbon tax by more than $50 a ton. It's skyrocketing up to $270 a ton. It's going to go up again on April the 1st. And voters in my district see that every day they cross the line to buy gas in Maine, 50 cents less a litre cheaper. On top of that, they're now collecting the HST and the GST on gasoline and energy prices, another $5 billion. When are these Liberals going to stop punishing Canadians and give Canadians a break?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
My colleague, the Minister of Natural Resources and Energy, just asked this member a question.
The bag man, Steve McKinnon. And Trudeau wants to hand over a difficult question. That's his bag man. I think we got the comment. This country is a joke. At times it is. Yes, Mike.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
In the category of God forbid, Mr. Speaker. Look, this member went around like all of his colleagues. Every single person who has asked a question in question period today went to their constituents' doorsteps with a brochure that says, elect us, we will have a price on carbon. How do those members now stand up with a serious face in front of Canadians and say they're not misleading them today?
There's this no conscience.
The honourable member for Lac Saint Jean. Mr. Speaker, this government already owed Quebec $470 million for services rendered to asylum seekers.
Oh yes, we're
the
back
debt
to
has
Quebec
now climbed
again.
to $1 billion, and these aren't
Well, the
projections;
blockheads
these are bills.
have their way.
Spending incurred to guaranteed asylum seekers rapid access to social assistance, temporary housing, healthcare, and schools. Ottawa's refusal to pay money it owes Quebec sabotages our ability to not only integrate these asylum seekers, but also to serve the entire population. When will this government reimburse Quebecers? The Honourable Minister of Immigration and Refugees. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Like the member knows very well, since 2015, we have paid $5.2 billion to Quebec as part of the arrangement we have with the Quebec government. We're ready to do more. We're ready to help Quebec, to sit down with them. Ideally, we'll do this publicly, but we know we have a good relationship with Quebec, and we are working with public servants.
This immigration minister is so
and what is that of Quebec. The Honourable Member for Lac Saint Jean. A very nice relationship, Mr. Speaker. For months, the minister says he's been at the negotiating table with Quebec, but there isn't one. And the Quebec minister confirmed it on Thursday. The federal government has been wasting our time for 2 years. Fortunately, we know that the premiers are scheduled to meet in coming weeks. The Quebec budget, as a reminder, is due on March 12th, and we're asking for $1 billion here we're talking about. So is the federal government going to announce today that it's reimbursing Quebecers? The Honourable Minister of Immigration. Mr.
Shut up with
Speaker,
your Quebecers, this
you know who's
Quebecers
not
that.
at the negotiating
So
table?
sick
Who will
of it.
never be? The Bloc. It's strange to hear such a statement from the Bloc. We are sitting down with Quebec public servants this Monday, and we are talking. We're in discussions and negotiations. It's important to work on both sides to know who does what. We're going to sit down with Quebec. We have a nice relationship, and we're going to continue that. The Honourable Member for Lac Saint Jean. It's not because you're 6'3" that you're up to the task. The federal government must also share the reception of asylum seekers amongst the provinces. Everyone has to do their share. Last year, the federal government finally started to do this, and yet last time we asked them to start again, the minister accused us of wanting to deport people, which would be a crime against humanity. Were the Liberals guilty of a crime against humanity when they did?
Do you have anything in your head that constitutes a brain?
Work last year? Of course not. So why don't they get back to work before Quebec's public services collapse? Before the minister answer, I'd like to remind all members to be careful to make sure that There is no targeted comments to a person. The Honourable Minister of Immigration, that's very kind of the member to say that I'm 6'3", I'm barely 6'1", but the question that Bloc has asked is clear, that they are seeking once again to squabble with the federal government, and they're looking to squabble with the government of Quebec, and they found one. So it's easy to conclude that the Bloc is not looking for relevant answers or reasonable solutions. They're just looking to fight with people. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives, the common sense Conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop crime. But this Prime Minister, after 8 years, is not worth the cost or the crime or corruption. And the Bloc leader has shown his true colors. Not only does he want to keep this Prime Minister in power for some time, he voted 8 times to spend more money on the corrupt ArriveCan app. The app, as he knows, was supposed to cost $80,000, and he and the Bloc voted $24 million in additional spending.
They had better
Does the Prime Minister
get
recognize that he and the Bloc are just not worth the
GC
cost?
strategies in there.
The Honourable Minister of Public
to
Services.
talk about $258 million that they received from this government,
which has already received several answers in the past. If
there
my
goes again.
colleagues perhaps are wondering, they could ask, how come Canada has seen the highest vaccination levels of all comparable countries? How come we are amongst the strongest of the G7 countries? How come Canada has more than 1 million new jobs over the COVID period? And how come we have been able to reduce poverty by 40% because of the CCB? The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Can the Minister tell me, with this Prime Minister, with the support of the Bloc, has indebted this country more than any other Prime Minister have done combined? The Bloc leader chose to vote for $24 million in spending for the PM's ArriveCan app. I'm not the one who said this. The Bloc leader himself has said this. He said they're not going to go over with a fine-tooth comb everything the government has spent. They said, take the money, we believe you. It costs very expensive a lot to vote for the Bloc. Does the PM recognize that he and the Bloc cost Quebecers way too much and that they're not worth the cost or the corruption, Mr. Speaker? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, thank you. When the Quebecers and Canadians watch TV, they can see the attitude of the Conservatives. They're denying the investment that has been done by our government, and we are envied by many countries worldwide. Just last week, I was at the opening of the first Moderna factory, and it's going to make 100 million vaccines to ensure the health and safety of Canadians for future generations to come.
Get out of here.
Abroad, we're going to continue to work in invest in our country.
It's not even a vaccine. It doesn't work.
Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, we knew that the Bloc wants to radically increase the carbon tax, and now we learned that the Bloc doesn't want to do its job. They voted 8 times to increase the ArriveCan budget, and then they said, we're not going to scrutinize everything the government spends. Not only do they want to radically raise taxes, they don't want to do their job. And last week, the Premier of Quebec asked, what's the Bloc for? Let's let the Liberal government answer this question. What is the Bloc for?
Prop up the Liberal government.
Once again, I
gripe about more money for Quebec.
Repeated twice before that questions must be addressed to the government or directed to directed on the work of a committee. The Speaker's having a hard time identifying which member to answer the question, but I see that the Minister of Public Services and Procurement is rising to answer the question. But I'd like all members, when they ask questions, make sure that they are pertinent to the work of the government.
That's a good point. Who the hell is still getting these vaccines?
We understand the
you'd have to be
facing
brain damaged from getting it once or twice before
it seems to be having
to get
a hard
third
time
and fourth.
identifying
These things are
who's
toxic.
the right person to answer the right question. But I do have a question for my colleague from Quebec. We know that
I can't keep up with your comments today, folks.
Having
You're
a
just
policy
fantastic.
of hatred
Keep it up.
or angst is not a good one. When will he go to the town hall next week and explain to Quebec why the Conservative leader said that they were incompetent and insulted everyone.
The honourable member from Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Everyone deserves fair pay and to be treated with respect by their employer. Yet for flight attendants, they have to work up to 40 hours a month with no pay. That's 3 months a year. All while CEOs of Canada's biggest airlines rake in millions of dollars plus bonuses. And the Liberals, they're doing nothing about it, letting CEOs
What are the
get
NDP
rich
doing
off the
about it? You're
backs of
supporting the
unpaid
Liberals.
work. Will this government stop the
I
exploitation
can't
of
take you
workers and address
seriously.
unpaid work in the airline industry?
I can't take you or your leaders
The Honourable
seriously as
Parliamentary
long as you
Secretary
prop
to the
up a
Minister of
corrupt
Transport.
Liberal government.
Speaker, we have been there from the get-go for Canada's workers. And in fact, we've introduced legislation in concert with the NDP on replacement workers. And we will continue to be there for workers every single step of the day. We have continued to change the legislation to make sure that there's a level playing field, and we will continue to address issues that the member has just brought up, as well as a whole slew of other issues. Thank you very much.
The honourable member from Courtenay, Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, for almost 3 years, the Liberals have let a shipbreaking company in Union Bay bend the rules, putting locals at risk. A boat filled with asbestos is being broken apart in sensitive fish and shellfish habitats, which could cause irrevocable harm and cost 500 people their jobs. The BC government,
that monstrosity is representing my
say the
hometown
Liberals
now.
are failing to protect Union Bay. When will the Liberals finally stop allowing this dangerous activity and further develop shipbreaking regulations to protect our local jobs and our environment?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. Mr. Speaker, this is something that we've been working on for quite some time, actually with the NDP, both through committee as well as with certain members. And we will, Mr. Speaker, in fact, continue to work on this issue and ensure that a lot of the concerns that the member has will be addressed shortly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Mr. Speaker, global inflation disproportionately impacts low-income seniors living on fixed incomes. That's why it was so important that we reversed the Conservatives' plan that would have raised the OAS eligibility from age 65 to 67
Well,
and would have abandoned seniors. We went further to increase
I gotta shut
OAS
this guy up for a
benefits.
second. All of the comments on the vaccine are quite interesting, and it's clear all of you understand that this is just another massive distraction. And who the hell is even planning to get another vaccine? What are they talking about today? Another contract to keep these vaccines running? These people are mad. Yeah.
More than 1 million Canadians have successfully enrolled in our dental care program. In 4 days, applications will open up to seniors age 70 and higher. And in the coming months, we'll open up eligibility for all Canadians. This is a life-changing program, Mr. Speaker. Not only is an essential part of oral health, but overall health and economic productivity. And I expect that children getting checkups and seniors getting dentures is going to put a smile on everyone's face, Mr.
The honourable member from Leeds, Grenville, Vito Lakes, Thousand Islands.
On one hand, common sense Conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. On the other hand, after 8 years, we have an NDP Liberal Prime Minister who isn't worth the cost, the crime, or the corruption, but he needed support for his $60 million Arrive scam. And where did he get it? From the costly cover-up coalition NDP. Now, what Canadians want to know in this scandal that cost them millions is what did these Liberals promise the NDP in exchange for their vote to support the corruption of this government?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the issue of allegations of misconduct in the procurement process, we take that very seriously. On the other hand, you see the Conservatives contorting themselves to come up with catchy slogans. While they do so, we're actually doing the work to get to the bottom of what happened here because, Mr. Speaker, anyone who acted inappropriately, there will be consequences. And we have already committed, the president of the CBSA has already implemented changes, but the Conservatives can stick to their slogans.
Yeah, I
Honourable member from East Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
Well, it won't fit on a bumper sticker, but that member and everyone over there voted against the common sense Conservative motion calling for the Auditor General to investigate their corruption. And corruption is exactly what
it's
they
Phoebe.
found, and that's what they get on that side of the House. On this side of the House, they have common sense Conservatives who will axe the tax and build the homes and fix the budget and stop the crime. So why did the NDP support these Liberals with the $60 million
Valley Girl
Arrive scam that saw Liberal insiders working in their basement getting paid millions while Canadians line up at their food banks? What did the Liberals promise the NDP?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, on the contrary, we support the
On
work
the
being done
contrary.
by the Auditor General, including the Information Commissioner. We want to get to the bottom of what happened here. Mr. Speaker, the CBSA president has been very forthright in sharing information with the committee. The minister has spoken with her as well, ensuring that information is being shared because we welcome this work. And as I have said many times in this House, Mr. Speaker, any misconduct in the procurement process will come with consequences.
Yeah, consequences.
The Honourable member from Brantford Grant.
Mr. Speaker, while common sense Conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime, the NDP, Liberal Prime Minister, is
It'll
not
be
worth
like
the cost,
consequences.
crime, or corruption after 8 years. Canadians are sick and tired of seeing the NDP leader pretend to be outraged over the Arrive scam. Let me remind the House that the Prime Minister needed votes to keep funding his $60 million Arrive scam, and the NDP came to their rescue. Joining Conservatives and voting no would have saved Canadians tens of millions of dollars.
Hear, hear.
Does the coalition between the Prime Minister and the NDP require them to fund the Arrive scam?
Way to go, Brocky boy.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Keep going
Mr.
after
Speaker,
these
if
bastards.
we just move on from the slogans written in the leader's office for one moment while I address another issue that would actually help Canadians today. On this order paper, Bill C-35, which will guarantee lower childcare costs for every single mother and father in this country. That can pass on a voice vote today. Well, that member, instead of taking his orders from the leader, walk down the office to the leader's office and tell him, pass C-35, bring down child costs today for Canadians.
I've never seen Stevie Boy get so upset.
Honourable member from Brantford Grant.
This member stands for the rights of Canadians and getting to the heart of this $60 million Arrive scam. They voted yes at least 8 times to give tens of millions of cost overruns, money for nothing contracts to shell companies, including $20 million contract to a two-person basement business that wrote the terms for their own contract. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost nor the corruption. I'll ask again. What did they have to do to get them to require them to fund the Arrive scam?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Well, I see that answer had a little effect, but I would again encourage my honourable colleague, instead of taking all the inbound invective and all the rage farming from the leader's office, that he trudge back down that long hallway to his leader's office and say, Mr. Leader, you know what we can do today? We can bring down dental care costs for Canadians by passing the bill of the fall economic statement that will help seniors, that will help poor families, that will help children in this country. We can have an impact today on Canadians' lives. Stand up and vote for Canadians.
They're just a bunch of bad actors.
Let's go back to ArriveCan. The government set up an $80,000 application to simplify traveller declarations.
I can't keep up.
Nothing to alarm the Prime Minister or the Cabinet. It was just a small, unimportant expense that's glossed over when summarising the department's actions. And then it went from 80,000 to 10 million to 30 million to 59 million. It seems to me that when it should have, I believe it should have been mentioned to the Prime Minister, when exactly were the Prime Minister and the Cabinet notified of these unacceptable cost overruns? The Honourable Minister for Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleague asked a very good question.
Trudeau's getting high on the plane
remembers
right now.
that there was a pandemic.
He had it
over the
loaded
past
with
few
cocaine
years,
when he was in
the worst
India.
pandemic since 1919, with the worst economic crash since 1930. She knows that public servants had two directives, the first of which was to act rapidly and efficiently to save hundreds of thousands of lives and millions of jobs, and the second was to act in a good way by following rules, which was unfortunately not done. The Auditor General noted this. Luckily, her recommendations have, for the most part, already been implemented. The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. The Liberals seem to want to pass the buck to civil servants, but it is unthinkable that a cost overrun of this magnitude was not reported. It is unthinkable that no one warned the government that it might be in trouble. The Prime Minister and the Cabinet were certainly alerted.
Zelensky's interview.
And yet they continue to spend Quebecers' money.
Oh, it's just Quebec
as if it was Black Friday. Did any reasonable person in this government say to themselves,
blood boil. I'm so sick of them.
well, that's enough, or did they hope that no one would notice? The Honourable Minister for Public Works and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I already answered that question earlier. What I'd like to add, however, is the importance and the value of the Auditor General's work. I'd like to thank her, but also encourage her to do her work. It is an essential role for our democracy in a context where Parliament and parliamentarians need that work to force governments to do the right thing and to make sure that rules are followed by all public servants federally.
The Honourable Member from Sherwood Park, Saskatchewan.
There's no
After
rules
8
being
years,
followed.
Canadians know that this NDP Liberal government is not worth the cost or the corruption.
Right.
With NDP help, these Liberals gave at least $20 million to a two-person company during the ArriveCan scandal for no work done, and Canadians want their money back. Meanwhile, the Auditor General found a stark absence of documentation. Reports now show that tens of thousands of emails were illegally deleted. Will the Prime Minister and his NDP partners responsible for this scandal stand up and tell us when they will release the documents that are missing?
This is the latest wrinkle. They illegally destroyed emails. This is why the Auditor General couldn't find the paper trail.
Not take the floor when they are not recognized by the chair, so that the chair and all members
So they're
can hear the
lying
questions and the
swine.
answers. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, while the Conservatives
no.
want to pretend that this is an issue that the government doesn't take seriously, we do. Mr. Speaker, we are very concerned about these documents, and that
You
is
bet you
precisely
are.
why we support the Information Commissioner's decision to review this matter. And Mr. Speaker, CBSA has already indicated that they will work with the Information Commissioner on providing any information they have. As I've said before, we want to get to the bottom of this, and any wrongdoing will come with consequences.
The Honourable Member from Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, a very simple question. When will the government release the Winnipeg Lab documents to this House?
The Honourable Minister for Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The short answer is imminently. It's going to happen right away. But I want to thank all parties, because it is through cooperation and working together, the mechanism that we set forth. Remember, it is the Public Health Agency of Canada that makes decisions around redactions.
Mr. Euthanasia. The euthanasia
process
czar.
that all parties participated in.
It's an
And as a
embarrassment
result
to
of
hear
that,
him talk
this is
about
exactly
anything.
why additional information will be deposed before this House. And that
You can't
additional
wait.
information
You can't
was
wait to
exactly
start
the
going
intention
after
in
the
setting
mentally
up that
ill,
committee.
because
And
they
that
did.
means
The
that
Liberals
Canadians will have
define you
additional views
as
on
mentally
the
ill
information
if you don't support them.
The Honourable
That's
Member
exactly
from
where this is
Wellington
going.
Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, the 4 MPs on the Winnipeg Lab Committee found that most of the information the government withheld from Parliament was withheld to shield the Prime Minister and ministers from embarrassment rather than to protect national security. These 4 MPs, including a Liberal member, recommended that the majority of the information withheld by this government be made public. Will the government finally admit that its decision to withhold documents from Parliament wasn't to protect national security, but rather to protect itself from political embarrassment?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Well, Mr. Speaker, of course, the honourable member across knows very well it is the Public Health Agency of Canada, not the Government of Canada, that makes a decision with respect to redactions. And those decisions have to do with national security and also with the protection of employees. And what we said, and by the way, it was initiated by this government, is we said there were questions that parliamentarians had, wishing to see additional information. We then, working, and I would remind the Conservatives didn't want to participate in this process.
How many people did your program kill today, Mark?
That produced the documents. It was the NDP.
How many people did your euthanasia program kill today, Mark?
And that's exactly why this information is available.
Because you're just a piece of political baggage. And that's all you've ever been since you arrived in the House of Commons. I remember you in opposition days.
Ask order. Order.
Oh, Greg is getting tough.
Colleagues, it is important for this conference. If I could ask the member from Ajax and the member from Sherwood Park for Saskatchewan to please take their conversation outside of this chamber, or to ask questions and to receive responses.
Somebody should really take Mark Holland outside with the conversation. That would be wonderful to see.
The honourable member from l'honorable député de Laval-des-Îles.
The honourable member for Laval-des-Îles. Mr. Speaker, during the pandemic, we entered into a historic agreement with Moderna to create life-saving vaccines in Laval.
Life-saving.
Can the minister tell us about the progress of this
facility not only didn't
and
work,
what it means for
they
jobs,
kill people,
for growth, and
this
for
mythology
success
has
in
got
Canada's
to stop.
biomanufacturing sector? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Look at this idiot. They're all standing up today.
Minister for Innovation, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for Laval-des-Îles and all my colleagues. We've delivered. Last Friday, I was with my colleagues to celebrate the end of the construction of the Moderna factory, the most modern factory in the world.
Oh, you can celebrate it all you want.
In Canada, we'll be able to build produce 100 million vaccines.
Well,
Mr. Speaker, this is great news for Laval.
You can keep them all for the Liberal Party and the Liberal cabinet, and all of you sitting in there who are foisting them upon innocent Canadians.
For Bellechasse-les-Etchemins, Lévis. Mr. Speaker, in the Chaudière-Appalaches region, an upsurge in violent crime is creating a great deal of insecurity. These violent crimes only confirm the appalling increase in violence in the country, which under this government has seen a 39% increase in violent crimes and a 61% increase in assaults with weapons or bodily harm. That's a sad record after 8 years of this Prime Minister. When will he reverse his laxist policies on crime and send criminals to prison where they belong? The Honourable Member, the Honourable Minister for Justice. I appreciate my colleague's question. What I would like to highlight for all Canadians,
this non-entity is going to be introducing the
crime in our
online harms bill
for
today.
Every single parliamentarian in this House. That being said, with Bill C-48, which has just been adopted 2 months ago, with that bill, we have been able to target violent offenders that have used a firearm or weapon in their crime. And we will target them in particular so they remain in prison. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins, Lévis. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government's policies allow violent criminals to serve their sentences in the comfort of their own living rooms, courtesy of the Bloc-supported Bill C-5. Another story of this constant blunder has been made public. A teenage girl was lured by an ex-policeman who is serving his sentence at home. This is unacceptable, Mr. Speaker, at a time when violence of a sexual nature has jumped by 71% since this government took office. What does the Prime Minister have to say to the victim who had the courage to speak out and who is seeing this sweet sentence served by her attacker at home? The Honourable Minister for Justice and Attorney General of Canada. Violent and sexual crimes are an absolute priority for our government, and that has been the case since we came to power. With regards to intimate partner violence, we targeted those actions a number of times through our bills. through bails as well and through other sentencings. With regards to mandatory minimum sentences, we have a complete contrast with the Conservatives when we deal with the overrepresentation of Indigenous and Black communities in our prisons. We have to target that kind of measure.
Member, some South Surrey, White Rock.
Common sense Conservatives will stop the crime that the NDP Liberal Prime Minister has unleashed on our streets for 8 years. Instead of enforcing the law and stopping crime, he's going after law-abiding sports shooters and hunters. Machine guns are illegal in Canada since the 70s, but last week, caught on video, violent attackers with machine guns opened fire at a home in small city White Rock. Why does the Prime Minister prioritize billions of dollars going after hunters and lawful gun owners instead of the real criminals?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, our government has been steadfast and focused when it comes to going after serious criminals, something that the Conservatives
you've been real steadfast.
actually talk about. As they yell out, Mr. Speaker, it'd be interesting for Canadians to know that during their time in office, they cut 600 RCMP employees from being able to operate across this country. Mr. Speaker, the so-called common sense Conservative means cuts to policing. We are cleaning up the mess they created.
The Honourable Member from Balpec.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Investments in infrastructure like roads, highways, bridges are crucial for our supply chains, local economies, and traditional industries, commuters, and all Canadians. Last week, our government, along with the province of Prince Edward Island, invested over $21 million to improve local roads, benefiting islanders and building on significant infrastructure investments. Can the Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities share with this House the government's policy on projects like this and how they benefit rural communities?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my honourable colleague for an excellent question, for his advocacy to get roads built in his community. This announcement worth more than $21 million is going to help build or improve 149 kilometers of road on the island. We continue to fund different road supports across programs, whether it's the Canada Community Building Fund, the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund, National Trade Corridors Fund, or the Invest in Canada Infrastructure Plan, which included specific eligibility for rural roads. We've got programs in Calgary and my own constituency in Nova Scotia and on the island. We're going to keep doing what it takes to put people to work in good paying jobs that build communities.
Hey. The Honourable Member from Churchill, Quebec-Aski.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians across the country are struggling with the rising cost of food, and it's even worse in Northern and Indigenous communities, where the lack of competition has allowed Northmart, often the only option, to jack up the cost of food without consequence. The Liberals are choosing to stand with wealthy CEOs instead of helping families afford food. In addition to competition, First Nations like Garden Hill need reliable all-weather roads to be able to bring in food and supplies. When will the Liberals stop subsidizing CEO profits, take on the grocery giants, and stand up for Northerners?
The Honourable Minister for Northern Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for her important question. We are working with provincial governments, with territorial governments, with Indigenous governments, with communities of the North to address the very real challenges that are in the North: isolation, lack of infrastructure, the high price of food and the high price of absolutely everything. With the partnerships we have, I'm confident that progress is being made, but there's so much more to do, and we will get it done.
Next on the list is the Honourable Member from Spadina, Fort York, but I understand that the member is having a difficulty. I'm going to ask him if he could just make sure that he could select the right microphone on his screen so that the interpreters will be able to have the proper sound. And I'll give the Honourable Member a couple of seconds to do so. Gonna just hold on for a second.
We got another.
I'm afraid we're going to have to come back to the member on another day
moment
for
of
him to ask
chaos.
his question so that we could work out this technical difficulty.
What a dog show. These people
And
just
so brings
can't
to
run.
the end of question period.
He's got no sense of time. This guy doesn't know when to begin or end. Anyway, yeah, we just question period is over. All right, thank you. That was not so bad today. Usually when the heavy hitters aren't there, I'm reluctant to describe Justin Trudeau as a heavy hitter, but he is the prime minister, and when he's there, there is a little more electricity in the room, largely because he says so many incredibly stupid things. But and if he's there for more than 5 minutes, if he doesn't run out of the house, there's some excitement, especially if Pierre Poilievre is also there. But we all know Trudeau is back, coming back from his little jaunt to Ukraine, where he gave away $3 billion to his buddy boy Zelensky. And of course, said the whole thing was Russian misinformation again. If you don't support his program, if you don't support him giving away your money to Ukraine, even though the war will soon be over and Ukraine is going down to defeat, if you don't support that, you're a victim or you're directly promoting Russian disinformation. And as we played that clip beforehand. So this afternoon, keep your eyes open, and I will be keeping my eyes open for the Online Harms Act. I already hate the title of this legislation. It is so deceptive. It is so nonsensical. And of course, it's not talking about what it's really about. But we will be keeping our eye on it. Might do a broadcast later if there's enough information to go on. But we'll be talking about it throughout the week. And I will be back again tomorrow so we can all watch question period together. Thank you for your comments. I can't keep up with your comments. There's so many good comments from all of you folks who are watching today and are becoming a real body of truth out there. And thank you for listening and providing your insight yourself into this. I try to provide my analysis based on my years as a journalist, as someone who worked on the Hill, and as a public affairs officer in the military who knows the establishment inside out because I was a part of it. And I'm working on the outside now. And I love to talk about how government likes to lie to you and misinforms you and disinforms you. And it's not the new media doing that. It's this Trudeau government. They're afraid of the truth. They're afraid of honest discourse. They're very fearful of people being allowed to speak their minds, and they really do fear free speech. So we'll be back again tomorrow. Thanks for listening today. Thanks for watching, and it's been a pleasure. Bye for now.